Welcome back, everyone, to the Healing Room. Tonight's topic of conversation is archetypes, take two. So we spoke about the archetypes in the last Healing Room, and just a quick synopsis that these archetypes are primordial patterns, energetic frequencies that reside in the collective unconscious. And at certain points in our soul's journey, we will connect with certain archetypes. And these archetypes will then reside within our personal unconscious or our subconscious mind. And there's many ways to work with the archetypes. I'm specifically teaching about the shadow aspect or the negative aspect of archetypes because I think we'll get the most bang for our buck when we focus on that. When, for example, in the meditation, we notice the mind with all of these thoughts. And the average person lives as if they are this mind with these thoughts, as if they are this ego personality. But the real self, the true self, is none of these things because we simply collect personality aspects over our lifetime and many lifetimes. And so part of the work that we're here to do is to relinquish all of these limiting programs, patterns, and beliefs that reside within the subconscious mind. And that is why meditation is so significant because we get to create a little space between ourselves, our true self, the witness, and the chattering mind and all the thoughts that it generates. It's not possible to do this type of archetypal work if there's no awareness, first and foremost, of that which is operating in the background, of that which is running the show, running my personality. So 95 to 99% of our lives are run by the subconscious mind. We are not in command. We're not the authority. We're not the author of our lives. And so we do these inquiries, we do these meditations and contemplations like, who am I? Who am I? Right? And when you start to ask that question, everything starts to dissolve because all the answers the ego gives is a no. No, I'm not this body. I'm not this personality. I'm not this name. I'm not this. I'm none of these things because one day it won't be here. None of these things are going to be here. So if I'm not all of these things, who am I? And hence the next contemplation goes to know thyself with a capital S. The small s is the ego personality. The large S self is the true self, the soul. So that contemplation of know thyself, that to me is the work of a lifetime. The work is to know who I am, why I am here, what is my purpose. We can get so caught up in the external world and all the doings and goings on, all the relationships, and then we lose ourself in that external world. So at some point, we have to retrieve ourselves. And one way to do that, one way to find or to allow the self to shine is to release or dissolve or disintegrate the non-self. And so that's where we get into all of these archetypal patterns that are operating through our personality. We want to command the archetypes. We don't want to be commanded by them. We want to run the show, not be run by something else unconsciously. So it takes effort and energy on a regular basis to activate that witness and begin to become aware of those patterns that are operating in the background that need to be called upon, need to be communed with. You can't simply get rid of things. Where a culture is like, well, just get rid of it. Get rid of my disease, get rid of my pain and suffering. I wish it was that easy. It hasn't been that easy for me. For me, I had to do excavation of the subconscious mind to understand, why do I have this pain and suffering in my life? Why do I have these diseases in my physical body, in my mind? Why are these patterns present? Because they all serve a purpose. And the goal is to receive the gift of that purpose. Why? Why did I call upon these archetypes specifically to be in my life? What is the gift? What is the lesson to be learned? And once we learn the lessons, we can move on. We have integrated that aspect, that fragment, and then we can move on to the next part of our lives. But many times, we don't know what the inner work actually is that needs to be done. We don't have the level of awareness and understanding of what is it that I'm actually here to do. And so I am giving you some insights by working with these archetypes. And I'll give you an example of how an archetype can show up. I was at an event this past weekend, and someone there has a pattern of saying, I don't fit in, I don't belong, I feel like I'm being rejected by this community. And I'm always surprised to hear these words out of this person's mouth because they're such an integral part of the community, and yet they have a completely different experience going on inside their mind. And so at a certain point, I walked over to this person. I said, you're telling yourself a story. You're repeating this story over and over and over again. And therefore, you are concretizing your reality within this story. You are continuously believing over and over again that it's true. And because you keep speaking the same words and because you keep saying the same things, it is true for you. It's not the truth, but it's true because you keep repeating the story over and over again. Story, pattern, energy, archetypes. So the archetype that he's running is the outcast. I don't belong. Even though everyone in the community welcomes him, he doesn't feel like he belongs within the community. Nothing to do with the external world, everything to do with his subconscious mind and a wound, no doubt, from somewhere in existence that he experienced. And that wound called in the archetype of the outcast. So it could go like we used the examples last week, last healing room, when I was showing how to do the integration of the archetypes. So the first step is always to go to the archetypal plane. What does that mean? It simply means I call upon the archetypal plane of existence. And on the archetypal plane, I call upon all those archetypes that are present and prevalent in my life. And so for this person, the outcast would show up. Once the outcast shows up, next question remains, why did I call you into my life? The archetypes just don't show up. There has to be a vibrational match in one's consciousness for the archetype to be present. And so the response may be, you called me into your life when you were 7 years old and you felt rejected by the kids at school. Now, that rejection right there may have simply been a catalyst for this soul to work through this archetype that it's been running perhaps for lifetimes. So if people aren't aware of lifetimes, then one could say, yes, it happened at 7 years old and I felt rejected. And so, okay, great. Thank you for letting me know, outcast, why it is I called you to my life. Now, the next question is, am I ready to integrate you into my heart? Am I ready to integrate you into my heart? Now, in general, when we see something in our subconscious, we then have the power of that which is being seen. We have power over it. It's no longer invisible or hidden in the background. It's now in our vision. So in general, when you find something, you're able to integrate it. But if there's any resistance to letting go of being the outcast, then it's not time to integrate. The next question is, what is the lesson to be learned? What is the lesson from this experience? The lesson is that I belong. I fit in. Not because I'm like everybody else, but because I fit in. Because I am who I am as an individuated individual soul. And so I choose to fit in. So the lesson is to not isolate, not separate, not disconnect, but instead to do all the things you don't want to do when you're feeling like an outcast, to reach out for friends. Even though you may fear being rejected, you still do and go in the direction of what you wish to experience rather than what you do not wish to experience. Never let fear stand in the way. Never let fear stand in the way. The fear is information to move forward into the fear, and that's the breakthrough. That is how we no longer exist within the archetype of the outcast. And so, thank you, outcast, for the lesson that you just shared with me. Now, I'd like to integrate you into my heart. But before I do, is there a gift that you can give me? Is there a gift that you can give me? And there's always a gift that the archetype can offer. And so the archetype may say the gift is the gift of self-worth, or the gift of belonging, or the gift of knowing that I fit in to this community, to this family, to this reality. Whatever it may be, it's going to be unique and individual to the person doing the exercise. And so the response then is, thank you for this gift. I now integrate you into my heart. And so it no longer exists in the shadow realm. It's now been brought to light and integrated in the heart. And then the next step is to call upon the higher octave of this archetype, of the outcast. And so I call upon the higher octave of the outcast to be present with me. That is the last step. And so one waits to see who shows up, who is coming, that it is of a higher frequency, of the soul level frequency, to present itself. And it could be many different archetypes. It could be the lover, for example. It's going to be unique to each individual. And there's no wrong and there's no right. It's just who shows up. And so you say thank you to the lover if it's the lover who shows up. And then you allow the lover to integrate into your whole energetic system. Because we do want to ride the waves of the positive higher octave of the archetypes. We do want to employ them, but because we say so, not because anyone else is saying so. We are commanding them, they are not commanding us. See how that works? This is how we then become the commander of our lives as we begin to notice all the places within our subconscious where we are losing energy, where we are losing vitality. We call all those parts back. We call them into our consciousness. From the subconscious to our consciousness, we create a bridge. We wake up from the slumber, from the illusion of this world that wants to keep us out of body, dissociated, living from the neck up in our intellect, not feeling our bodies, not feeling our emotions, right? It's a machine. I call it the machine of Maya, keeping us busy all the time. Go, 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 run, 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 next, 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 faster, faster, faster. So we have to do the exact opposite. Slow down, relax, meditate, take deep breaths, drop into the body, surrender into the moment, be present. Ask others to be present when they're not present. This is how we begin to become the author and the authority of life. And then we're not losing energy. The energy within us is continuously being recycled. We are continuously being rejuvenated. Less and less, we're losing energy. More and more, we are becoming energized. Years ago, when I was beginning my practice as a healer, a holistic healer, I would do a session and then I'd have to sleep for a good hour because I was not doing the healing properly. My inner voice would say, "You're too in the way." And I was like, what does that mean? I'm too in the way. It says, "You have an attachment to people healing." And I'm like, well, they're paying me. Don't they have to get a result? No, your job is not to heal them as a healer. Your job is to be present with them and their dis-ease. Because if you heal their dis-ease, you now have to take on that dis-ease. It's up to people to heal themselves. You are the witness, you are the presence, you are the healer, but you're not the one who heals. It's that which moves through you that heals. So then I found that there was a caretaker archetype operating in the background, attached to people getting better. I want people to feel better after they're with me. That archetype was taking up a good amount of my vital force. That's why I had to take a nap after every client to rejuvenate myself from that which I was losing because of this caretaker archetype. So I did the whole process of integrating the caretaker, called upon the higher octave of the caretaker, which is the one whose self takes care of themselves. Self-love, self-care, those qualities had to be learned because part of my strategy for surviving life was to take care of everybody else, to make sure everybody else was okay, specifically in my family, and then I would be okay. I would neutralize a situation of dis-ease, but then I was taking on all the dis-ease because it's all energy. So if it leaves and transforms, it has to go somewhere. It doesn't just go into thin air unless it's fully integrated. And so, of course, I was picking up all of the lower frequencies. So these are just some examples of how these archetypes are running the show, limiting our lives, how we consider ourselves to be these ego personalities with all these limiting qualities that have really nothing to do with the real self, the true self. They're just fragments of conditioning or bookmarks in existence of experiences that we had in the past. All these experiences are experiences that we've had in the past. So that's why in the present moment, we get to shift all of that, because if we don't change the past, then our future becomes our past, or the past becomes our future. It is just this continual loop of energy, back and forth, and it bypasses the present moment. But the present moment is the only thing that's real. That's it. Everything else is just a made up construct. That's why that meditation in the beginning, witnessing and watching, watch those thoughts, watch that mind, watch the body and its sensations, but don't give it so much energy. Just let it be. Be curious. Be intrigued. And then when you catch a thought, then you can say, who is that just had that thought? Who feels guilty? Who feels angry? Who is holding on to that experience when I was 7? Who is that? Because it's not the self, it's a fragment. And that fragment then creates a story. And then that story gets concretized. And that concretization becomes a disease in the physical body and the mind. Do you see how it works? Energy becomes form because we don't dissipate the energy, we don't integrate the shadow. So the energy eventually has to become form, and that form becomes a disease, a physical disease or a mental disease. And then we have to go back and locate what is the source of this dis-ease within me. And one of those major sources are the archetypes and the limiting belief systems they're running. These are the negative or shadow aspects of the archetypes, as opposed to the positive or the exalted aspect of the archetype. So there's lots to consider here, and it's not always easy to see oneself and to locate these archetypes. And that's why we need other people who can hold space for us, who may be able to translate what we are experiencing and find the archetype, support us in locating the archetype. So don't get frustrated when you can't see through the subconscious. We're not always going to see our own patterns. That's why it's called subconscious, below our conscious awareness. I've had many teachers help me to get to this point in life, to help me see what I wasn't seeing, to help me heal what I didn't know I needed healing with. And so we all need mentors, we all need healers to help us reveal the shadow content within the subconscious.